and participants. Bharati Vidyapeeth's Institute of Computer Applications and Management BVI CAM, in association with Computational Intelligence Society CIS chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Computer Society chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Technology and Engineering Management Society TEMS chapter of IEEE Delhi section, System Man and Cybernetics SMC Society chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Communication Society of IEEE Delhi section, Consultants Network Affinity CNA Group of IEEE Delhi section, Life Member Affinity LMA Group of IEEE Delhi section, Inter-Society Relations IRS Standing Committee of IEEE Delhi section, Industry Relation and Special Interest Group on Humanitarian Technology Site Standing Committees of IEEE Delhi section, Region 10 of IEEE with the Associations of Computer Society of India CSI, Institute of Information Technology Professionals IITP, ISTE Delhi section and IETE Delhi Center as technical collaborator welcomes you all to the IEEE IETE BVI Camp technical lecture series on the disruption called Gen AI. According to Parag Parekh, Global Chief Digital Officer of IKEA Retail, customers can then interact with the AI to give it more information. What style, traditional Scandinavian, modern are they looking for? What color schemes do they like? What about lightning? What is the budget? The AI can then generate any number of options and variations to browse and choose between. It's a bit like having a professional interior decorator sit with you, helping you create the look you want. This quote reflects the vision big organizations as well as customers expect from Gen AI. Gen AI has emerged as one of the key disruptions in 2024 and is showing signs of accelerated early adoption by the industries. In the session today, we'll discuss the impact of Gen AI and how we as technology practitioners can gear up to embrace this disruption. The session will explore its all-round technological dimensions. I would first take this opportunity to welcome amongst us our distinguished panelists for the day. We are privileged to have amongst us a galaxy of experts. I would first request Professor Emin Huda Sir, Director, Bharati Vidyapeeth's Institute of Computer Applications and Management, BVI CAM, and Chairperson, IEEE Delhi Section, to address the participants with his inspiring words. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. Good evening, one and all. And at the outset, let me take this opportunity to welcome our valued speaker for today's talk, Devjana Das Gupta ji, Executive Architect, IBM India Private Limited, for the topic The Disruption Called Gen AI. Thank you so much, madam, for being with all of us and to inspire all of us how disruption called Gen AI facilitated disruption is in positively manner changing our day-to-day life, the quality of the life, and all spectrum of our day-to-day work. I also take this opportunity to thank my all the participants amongst the attendees and the panelists from various professional societies, including my friend Mr. Ajay, who is a great source of strength for organizing these webinars. Many of you are old participants. Keep on attending our webinar. This is 162nd webinar of the series which was started in May 2020 in the backdrop of COVID, when entire world was almost black, completely locked and not understanding what to do next. So this webinar was started to keep them engaged in active learning so that they should not go in a shell, they should not go into a depression and keep upgrading their knowledge. Since May 2020, this webinar series, either weekly or alternate week, is being organized in a sustainable manner, and because of which last year in 2024, when IEEE US means IEEE headquarters, started evaluating the sustainable knowledge dissemination series in the world. They advocated our series as one of the most sustainable webinar series being organized by any organization without any break, without any gap, and being and having been a tool to facilitate the knowledge dissemination, upgrade the knowledge of the peer professionals to almost 1 lakh plus people all across the country and abroad. So congratulations to all of you for having done that. This is because of the active participation of the attendees and, of course, the valued speakers. Dear friends, all these recordings of 162 talks are available at our YouTube channel, BVI Camp. If any one of you have missed that, or you come across to any of your friends, your students, your colleagues, please recommend them to come to our channel and go through the sessions which are immensely valuable to one and all. Dear friends, the disruption called GenAI, to me as a student of computer science, when you call disruption, it means differently. But when you call disruption to humanities, arts, and other people, it means differently. All of us are aware that the technology when came, the information and the communication technology when came, it disrupted our day-to-day life in a positive manner. You see, Ola, Uber, huge disruption. Now we do not go to any prepaid taxi booth and get a taxi. We go to the app, and these Ola and Uber kind of or Airbnb agencies have got huge taxi to their pool. But when they started, it was the only information and communication technology which was facilitating. And actually, there was no resource, no hard resource, no taxi, no car, despite they were the largest in the world, Airbnb. Oyo, no hotel to them, but they were the largest chain of hotels because they were aggregating it with the help of the technology. Like Paytm, like PhonePe, Google Pay, etc. So I used to say that this disruption has made the technology to be perceived by the people in a way that the business strategy will change, and it is not the technology which always will change. Till Industrial Revolution 4.0, it was the technology which used to change. From Industrial Revolution 5.0 onwards, it is the business process which is changing. Means instead of going to a shop at some point of sale and then purchasing an item, people are placing order right at their home using some app, maybe Amazon, maybe Flipkart, maybe Snapdeal, maybe Mishu, or maybe something else, or maybe Swiggy and maybe Zomato, etc., etc. So the business processes are changing. The technology was there to support, and that's how the traditionally old business, which were working fine with almost last 4 decades, 5 decades, even 10 decades, were not working fine because of the entire disruption in the system, the tech-led disruptions. Now the AI, artificial intelligence, and that too the Gen AI, the kind of chat GPT based AI, the kind of generative artificial intelligence, these disruptions have gone much beyond this, and this has created an influence and impact in the mind of the people in a way that now if you wanted to write an application, the Gen AI is there to help you. If you wanted to write a resignation letter, Gen AI is there. So much so that if you wanted to write some poetry, Gen AI is there to help you. If you wanted to write a love letter to your girlfriend or maybe to your wife, the Gen AI is there to help you. That's the kind of the massive penetration which is happening in the society. But I always say that the best part of the technology must be availed, and the worst part, which is making us handicapped. I mean to say that we should not leave ourselves to be controlled by the technology. Rather, what is happening in the society, that the technology is controlling us, that is bad part, or addiction is the bad part. We should be in a position to control the technology. So this will be the use of the technology. Rather, we should be careful about the abuse of the technology. For this topic, we have invited today's valued speaker, Debanjana Das Gupta ji, to enlighten us, to make us aware that how, in which way this disruption is positive to all of us, and how, and in this way, this disruption called Gen AI based disruption is negative to all of us. With this expectation, all of us are here. Dear friends, there are many other webinars from 163rd onwards, which are announced, which will be announced in due course few. So keep connected to our portal. Keep registering if you have not registered so that you receive the notification in time, and keep availing maximum benefit. There is a WhatsApp group. If you have not joined any of the WhatsApp group to join the webinar, do write to us. There is a portal where you can register. And of course, on the website, if you go, you will get the details of the webinar. You will also get the link and the QR code where from you can join this webinar. So keep attending, keep motivating to all of us. The COVID, in the backdrop of which it was started in May 2020, is again coming slowly, slowly. The China is giving very bad news, and in one or other state, some or other cases are coming. So stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning despite disruptions which keep on happening in and around us, and ensure that this disruption is for some positive benefit. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best. God bless you all. Over to you, Dr. Ritika.
Thank you, sir. With this, I would now first welcome amongst us our guest speaker, Ms. Debanjana Das Gupta, with an e-bouquet. Welcome to the session, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ms. Debanjana Das Gupta is an associate partner and executive architect in IBM India Private Limited. In her current role, she is the chief architect in process and excellence and automation advisory in IBM Global Automation. She is a technical advisor to multiple global clients, advising and leading them in their business process transformation journey with extreme automation. A published author, Debanjana is a veteran in the IT industry with over 3 decades of experience. She is also a strong advocate of women in technology and has led many career development programs within IBM as well as externally in collaboration with IEEE India Council with very successful outcomes. We are honored to have you amongst us, ma'am, and I would now request you to kindly enlighten the House. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Ritika ma'am. So shall I start?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, please share your screen first.
Yes. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think Dr. Hoda gave a fantastic introduction, covering many of the points, which are absolutely pertinent, and that's why we are here, I think. So generative AI is changing the way, businesses will work, IT will work, are probably, some of the syllabuses need to change. We need to be upskilled, reskilled at all levels, not only just the students or the college, graduates, at all levels. We have to get reskilled. And what is extremely important is how we make this a good tech, a good technology, which actually benefits the society. Because, to quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. This is an extremely powerful technology, but we absolutely need to ensure it is, used for the benefit of the society, because everything has, its pros and cons. So we are all learning, right, with this disruption. When it suddenly came, I think around end of 2023 was when I kind of got introduced to it. Overnight, ChatGPT, scaled to 1 million of subscribers. Everybody had to, so what is this that has suddenly come up? And since then, so last year, what at least from a business perspective in services company like us, so we all experimented. So we created small POCs, small pilots. We went to our clients large banks, large conglomerates, they were also interested. Let's do a pilot, let's do a POC. And what we saw was, this is really powerful, but it has to be applied in the correct way. And today, for example, in 2025, so if you open LinkedIn, I mean, it's a buzz there. It's all agentic AI agents. I mean, every, thing, alternate post is on AI agents. So there is a huge, I would say, huge hype. There is definitely a significant truth to the hype, because last year the whole world experimented. They got certain value, they understand the dangers and the benefits. So now it's kind of time when we have really put it to use. So put it to use to business, put it to use for the further advancement. So if you think, what is a foundation model and how has it really changed? You know, so AI was there. Artificial intelligence was there since when even I was in college. Some of the projects that we did, on neural networks, artificial intelligence. So it's still there. So suddenly, what has changed is, with artificial intelligence, it takes, significant time, effort, resources to kind of train a model. Now, with foundation models, it's kind of, you get a pre-trained model, which is trained on vast amount of data, which can do a wide range of work. So suddenly, if you think, your scalability has increased. So previously, what was a very narrow scope, now it's like it's just got, the bubble has burst, something like that. So it kind of brings to a, as it says, like inflection point. And I think you may have heard the statement. So there are many, opinions. So is it going to take our jobs, especially we, for example, uh, people who are in IT services, IT industry, we are typically known as knowledge workers. So is it going to take our job? I think this was similar concern when I was growing up, when just computers were introduced in India. And I remember, a lot of discussion saying that, some governments saying no, we should not allow computers. Some governments saying yes, we should, because the worry was always there, like, is it going to take our jobs? Okay, so did it take our jobs? It did, probably for some roles, certain skills, but it opened a vast, area of opportunities. So I think similar thing would happen with generative AI. So we'll see how it kind of changes. But what is extremely important is, and I don't remember who said this, maybe some of the one of the CEOs, that what is going to change is a person or a company enabled with generative AI will be more equipped than who's not. So AI and generative AI, in my mind, is something that augments the human brain. So what I believe is, there is nothing as powerful as human brain. Even with today's advancements, we probably haven't reached even 30% of what the human brain can do. So it's like the most, ever. But so if the most complex machine is also augmented with a fairly complex machine, its power increases. So that's where, AI, generative AI, uh, is going to be leveraged. Person who's leveraging AI and generative AI, a business who's leveraging AI and generative AI, would scale, would grow, would do better, or do it easily, scale faster than somebody who's not doing it. So I think that is the crux. It is going to augment our ability as humans, as persons, as individuals, as businesses, to do better. So, with that introduction, let me start. So this is something that I do, this is something that Gartner, which is a leading analyst firm, publishes, and they do it for most technologies. They do it for technologies, products, services, companies, etc. So for this is called a hype cycle. And what this actually shows is, almost like a life cycle of a technology or a technology trend. So if you see the bottom, the x-axis, so it's a time scale. So there are different stages. It says the innovation trigger. So this is where, the kind of, it's kind of, I would say, incubated. Technology is getting incubated. Then you see the second, column, which is like the peak of inflated expectations. So what this means is here the incubated technology has reached something which we always call like a MVP or a minimum viable product. So it is ready to be experimented with. It has got capabilities. It is ready to be experimented with, but let's see how it goes. And there are a lot of other things that it might need. For example, guardrails, things like that. So that is the peak of inflated expectation. So the value has to be proven. Then you see the third is the trough of disillusionment. So this is where you see it kind of it's falling down, but this does not mean that its value is decreasing. The value is stabilizing. So here it's almost like this is getting proven as a good technology or a valuable technology. And then when you see like the next one is the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. So slope of enlightenment, this is when it is scaling. So people are adopting, it's scaling, it's proven its value. And eventually it becomes plateau of productivity. It's almost like business as usual. So it's a given that you will have this technology, right? So if you see generative AI, so it's out here, foundation model, large language models, GenAI workload accelerators. So it is typically at its peak of inflated expectations. For example, say GenAI enabled virtual assistants. It has already almost proven its value. It is coming down towards the trough of disillusionment. So it's a very good time when businesses are adopting generative AI. In fact, this year, almost all the clients that I have yet talked to, the year has just started. They have shown interest that yes, let us go. We have done pilots, we have done POCs. Now let us go, to full steam. So Gartner also says like yes, it has arrived. Now let us experiment. Almost experimentation is going over. The initial small experiments are going over. Let us take it to scale, bring it to businesses, and let's see what it can do. So how is it different? I started with how it is different very briefly, but primarily what makes generative AI, it's almost democratizing the whole artificial intelligence paradigm. So traditional AI, when we did, so we started, I myself started doing artificial intelligence at a commercial scale for clients around 2015 when I became a part of our automation team. And so we started with chatbots. Almost all of you may have got experience with chatbots. So you would know it needs a lot of training data. So training is a huge thing. So we have to label the data, then we have to train it. Then you test the model, then you refine it again with additional training data. So training data is a big deal there. For generative AI, so it comes with a model which is pre-trained on large amounts of data. Now, you might say, yes, it still needs training. Yes, it still needs training, but the training mechanism is different. So here it is a supervised learning in traditional AI. In generative AI, it is called self-supervised learning. So yes, it needs label data, a very small amount of label training data, but then it self-supervises, self-creates the labels and you know creates that self-supervised training model. So what happens is you have a model which is trained on vast amounts of data for which you really did not have to employ a lot of manpower. It was pretty much automated. Okay, so that's a big difference. You don't have to supervise it. Now, because it is trained on huge data set, it is not narrow. For example, in traditional AI, we have built models, sentiment analysis or entity mapping. So, what is the intent mapping? What is the intent or entity extraction? But for example, these are pretty narrow. It's focused on, say, a few use cases. It's not vast. But generative AI foundation models are, they can do a lot of, a wide range of tasks because they're trained on this wide range of vast data sets. Now, what is common for both is, the last point, which is need to monitor bias and drift. And I would say, for generative AI, this is extremely important because I'm already taking a pre-trained model. So frankly speaking, I don't have the data provenance or I don't know what data this has been trained on. In fact, that is one of the key, I would say concerns uh, in business adoption. So if I'm deploying, say, generative AI for maybe a chatbot, where I'm augmenting the, say, State Bank of India chatbot with generative AI, And me as a user, I'm asking the chatbot, tell me, certain things, and there's an example later in the slide, give me the loan details or what is the rate of interest. I would want to know where is the data coming from? Can I believe this data? Because when you're using it for commercial purposes for businesses, the data needs to be authentic. It cannot hallucinate, right? I cannot work with a model which is hallucinating. So there are certain pros, there are certain cons, but I think at this point, the scalability and the democratization is extremely important, and it's, showing its initial value. So this is basically, what this slide says is how it is different, and exactly what we have been saying. So traditional AI models, you would see, they are trained with label data, very task specific. You know, each model is focused on a set of tasks and really cannot go beyond it. Whereas for foundation models, it is pre-trained on large data sets. And so there are different, I would not say usages, but how we can actually leverage and um, ensure that we are achieving the task that for which it has been built. So you must have heard about prompting or the prompt engineering. So it is basically, I'm asking a question, it is my user query, and I'm getting an answer. Now, like when we did traditional AI models, we did not talk of prompting. I'll tell you, at least my experience has been, when we were doing traditional AI models, it was a chatbot. So it's still a user query. There, the focus was more on, is it able to understand what I'm saying, my intent? So you must have heard about the word intent, intent classification, intent mapping. So in fact, many of us, we have tested, giving wrong, spelled words, or confusing, trying to confuse the system between, say, us, 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 and the United States, US country. Is it able to understand? So it's still the same user query, but in foundation model, how it changes is you are giving it explicit instructions. It already understands natural language. So I need not test it, or I need not be careful about what I'm saying to it, but I have to give it explicit instructions. It's almost like if I have to teach someone to do a task, I'll tell, okay, for example, if you have to, write an essay, say, to a student. So you write an introduction, which should describe, what your overall context is. Then it should have a body where you explain, a rainy day or a cold day or something. And then finally, it should have a conclusion, which kind of summarizes and, ends with a positive note or something, so a call out. So prompting is basically, the user query plus giving specific instructions so that the foundation model can go and figure out, basically, and fetch me a right answer. At the end of the day, it has to serve a purpose, which is fetching me the right answer. So that is prompting. The second part is basically tuning. So there is something that is called a fine tuning of a foundation model. Now, prompting does not change the model. Prompting is more like it's a usage, how I am using the model. Now, for the fine tuning, basically say it's a foundation model which is trained on, a variety of data sets. Now, I want to customize it for, say, my organization. Say I want to have a foundation model built for IBM, something. In that case, I could fine tune it with very specific data set and retrain, right? But remember, training a foundation model is like, it's an immense task. It needs, you must have read, the amount of power, the amount of compute, and the amount of energy it produces. It's basically, it's a threat to sustainability. I would say. So if every company starts building their own foundation model, it's a disaster, and it's not cost effective as well. So fine tuning should only be very, used when you have really a very, very specific need. Maybe NASA is fine tuning a foundation model, maybe on Mars landscape, something like that, because it is mission critical, where every, the accuracy matters. However, there are other mechanisms by which we can improve the accuracy of a foundation model, make it not hallucinate without fine tuning. And that would be a more sustainable approach. Okay. So there are pros and cons to everything. But why I'm saying it is, if you have to, for example, I met a client just before the holidays, like in November, and they kept on asking me, like, do you think we should build a foundation model for this company. I said, like, please don't be out of your mind. It's something like that. Yeah, it's like you don't even have an idea of what you would embark on. Not only the cost, but I mean there are so many other considerations. One of them, very important, is the um, sustainability aspects. Think of the amount of carbon footprint you put in. So there are different considerations, pros and cons when you are going from traditional to foundation model. And these are not really, conflicting technologies. It's not like either or. You would have both in many cases. Maybe one takes precedence over the other, but there is no conflict between these. Okay, so now this is basically I'm just switching to why it is so important for businesses. So, as we have seen, 23 was the trigger. That's when all of us, we suddenly woke up to ChatGPT. 24 was the time of experimentation. And 25 is basically when we are going to take it to scale. At least we'll have, I think, from an industry perspective, most companies, most big companies who have not yet started experimenting, they will experiment, and leading companies are going to take it to production, right? So it's that powerful, and there is a lot of I would say a money associated with it. There is a lot of focus on one, productivity improvement. For example, say we as knowledge workers, if I have to write code, and many of you must have already experimented, code writing has become really easy. Okay, but that does not mean the developer's job is going to go. Developer's job is going to switch, right? So just if you think of web development, almost 50% of that is going to get automated. I can just say that. However, if you think of creating these agents, right, that is not yet going to get automated 50%, because it's all exploration, right? Think of the designs. Again, I would say 20-30% of the I would say the common patterns might get automated. There are tools that are going to come up, but the innovation will continue. How you will have, say, generative AI modules talk to the rest of your enterprise. What would be your security considerations? What would be your hosting considerations? And then as it goes into, say, agentic mode, there are so many new things which are coming up. And most importantly, AI ethics, responsible AI, explainable AI, these are going to be very important. So whatever is the answer that my foundation model is giving me, that has to be explained. So it goes back to, from where did you get this answer? How much is the confidence code? How much can I trust you? Is this ethical? What kind of data was it trained on? Is there an inherent bias? Offensive text, hatred texts, those have to be, kind of eliminated. So a lot of work is there, huge amount of work. So for us as IT workers, IT engineers, developers, the nature of work might shift, but work is not going away anywhere, right? So how would you, kind of, so this is something that I think we just covered, but uh, I'll just quickly go through it. So pre-trained model is basically your foundation model. We already have something, so you start upfront. So your time to market or time to deploy is kind of initially low. Prompt engineering, I should explain to you, right? So this is basically how you're going to use the model, and it's very important you have to give it explicit instructions to get your relevant answer. And the fine tuning, you should use it selectively with caution, because this is extremely compute intensive. Now, when it comes to prompt engineering, I'll just quickly go through it. So it's basically, as you're teaching a child, right? There's something called zero shot, where you're just asking a question and you're expecting an answer. Then there is a mode called one shot, where I'm giving an example, right? So it could be, if the customer has sent an email and saying that I am very happy that I have received my credit card. So I say that this is an example of an email and the sentiment is positive. So that's my example. Then I give a bad email example and I say, so then it is a negative sentiment. So when you give one example, it's called one shot, because then the model will kind of look into your example and try to replicate. And then the other one that you have is few shots. So here you could get so there are two short, multi-shots, you give multiple examples. So this is more like giving a hint to the model that, this is how you should understand. This is how this logic operates. So that is some of the modes of prompt engineering. Now this is kind of a view of the whole stack, if I can say. So if I'll start from the bottom. So you have your hardware providers, right? So these are basically your chip makers, which are kind of producing the high level of compute that is required. Then you have most services, most of these services are on cloud. So you would have your cloud service providers, but here you could also have, if somebody has a private data center, that could also be here. So these are your infrastructure. This green box kind of indicates the infrastructure. So, and this is common for any software. So you would have an infrastructure layer, you would have a data layer, you would have business services layer, you would have your channel access, which are like, how we access, say, a web portal or a mobile app, things like that. Similarly, so here you have the infrastructure. Then on top of your infrastructure is your boundaries. Now, if you see, there is a, I would not say a debate, but there is a concept that open source models or proprietary models. There are discussions around that the world is going open source. So again, each has their pros and cons. But this is what we have today. So we have certain proprietary closed source models, and we have, open source models, Meta, Google, Hugging Face, uh, which are for use, under different mechanisms. So some are paid, some are, subscribed, whatever is their mechanism. Then you have the software providers. For example, if you think of the enterprise software, say Salesforce, Microsoft, ServiceNow, so they also have, for example, Microsoft, Azure AI, so they have partnered with OpenAI. I would say, they are also playing in foundation model field as well as in the software providers field, and they are embedding, the foundation model of the generative AI capability in their software. And then you have pure play generative AI, which is like a software like ChatGPT. It's available on as a mobile app on Portal, Foro, you have subscription model in the different. And then finally, the top is basically the services players who are using this whole stack. So they are using the generative AI services and, to build business applications. So that is how kind of this ecosystem is going to work. And if you think on top of the IT services is us, who will be kind of working for these services players, kind of developing, building, creating. So they would be, broadly two categories of knowledge workers. One who will build, or who will fine tune, or who will create algorithms for this generative AI models, and the rest, which will be a largest pool, is who will use, just like an API. So somebody builds an API and somebody uses an API. It's exactly that. Okay. So this is basically the ecosystem. Now, what is it? So we have been talking about generative AI. What are the things that AI can do for us? Generative AI can do for us. Primarily five categories. Okay. Summarization. So if you give it, a set of, a different, a whole big document, and you say summarize, it is able to summarize. It can do classification. So that's sentiment analysis. If I give him relevant data, it can classify it. And I can tell the model how to classify. So is it positive, negative, yes, no, black, white, whatever. Then it can also do generation. So generation here, it is content generation. So it can be of various types. I can create a blog, poetry, song. I can do it for business I'm doing. I can create, say, the examples here, marketing campaigns. I can create emails, automated email generation. I can also generate code, which is very important, right? So, for example, see, mainframes still have COBOL codes, RPG 400 codes. And we have always seen there's a scarcity of people today who knows all these technologies. They are growing older, our generation. So how can I convert it to Java or Python? So code generation is coming out as a very good, very important feature, and which directly impacts people like us, knowledge workers. So this is a very powerful mechanism, which is coming, which is more on the IT delivery side. Then you have extraction. So if I give it a document and I tell, for example, I give it my driver's license, an image, a PDF, and I tell, can you extract my name? find out the name, find out my date of birth, find out the city I stay. So it is able to, extract those data. So entity extraction or a named entity extraction is what we call it. It's pretty powerful in that. And definitely question answering. So it has natural language processing, right? It is able to process natural language. So it is able to understand the question, and then based on the question and the intent, it is able to fetch an answer if it has, or it can also hallucinate. I'm not saying like it is all 100%. This is still an experimental technology. It can also hallucinate. And one of the goals that when we are using it for business is to develop it in such a way, create those guardrails so that the hallucination is minimized. If I deploy it in a business process and it starts hallucinating, it's going to create havoc. Okay. So this is some just an example. So in fact, that bank's example, if I ask, say, a SBI chatbot, which is powered by generative AI, give me what is the interest rate today or something, and it gives me something. But I really need to know that this authentic data, right? Is this the right data? Or if I say, give me the exchange rate, rupees versus dollars, I need to know where it has got it from. So that authenticity needs to be there, which kind of goes back, to the data source. It should be able to tell me this is where I got it from. So that is one important aspect. Second is it should be able to give, this is also a problem. And if you see, this is slightly dated, this chart. So Llama 2B is now we have Llama 3, Llama 4. So it should be currency. The currency of the data should also be absolutely, depending on the use case, it should be right and it should be relevant to the use case. So these are some issues, but I would say, what is more important is one is definitely the provenance of data, like what is my data source? And second is, which is kind of related, the explainability. Is it explaining what it is doing? And as I move, when we go to agentic, explainability is going to become extremely important. I have to know why the agent is performing in this way, because otherwise I just can't leave. It's like it's like you have kind of uh, left like you have created a robot and asked it like you go and do whatever you want. You cannot really afford that way. You have to know what it is doing. Is it doing good or bad? Do I need to control it? So those regulations and guardrails are becoming more and more important, and I think the world is also talking about it. So Europe has already passed certain regulations. Those are going to be extremely important when we are going to harness this power to the fullest. Okay, so I'll just switch gears now. This accuracy, currency, this becomes very important. Now, for example, that SBI case, if I have to ask, what are the rates of interest for a loan? I want to buy a car, I want a 3-year loan, what is the rate of interest? So a foundation model can give me some answer because it has got trained on, the whole internet data, and right or wrong, it will give me some answer. What if I want, it to refer to just documents from SBI so that its accuracy is, perfect? Okay. So that is where this pattern comes into picture, which is called retrieval augmented generation. It is an extremely powerful pattern framework, whatever we may want to call it. And this is kind of gaining traction. And this, I think it has really contributed to kind of this adoption, Gen AI adoption, because it makes it very contextual. I really don't want to go to the whole of the internet. I don't want to know what other banks are doing. I really want to have my users get data from, say, I have a whole set of documents from there. So that is where RAG comes into picture. And how RAG works is basically, it searches. So it goes and searches the document. So first is I have to give it a set of documents, and it could be any document, Word, PDF, whatever. It Once we ask a question, it will go and search those documents. If that question or the answer text or the question text is found in one of those documents, and if it finds it, it will bring it. So once I have that chunk which is relevant to my question, it will be passed along with the prompt to my foundation model. So I will tell the foundation model, this is my question, but these are also, some chunks that I'm sending you. Find the answer from here, and then you summarize and give it back to me. So what is happening is I'm still using my generative AI model primarily for summarization and maybe enhancing my answer. but the context or like the main content of my answer is coming from documents which I can absolutely trust. So it kind of increases. Just think about it. If a system is giving me right answers, I will be able to trust it more. And why it is giving me right answers? Because it is picking the answer from the right set of data, right? The data is right. So it becomes trustable. It becomes contextual. It is focused on my business, so my enterprise, my question. So it becomes, exactly how it is supposed to behave. Because at the end, if you think, businesses will not deploy technology just for the sake of technology. It's not like, oh, this is the latest thing, let me deploy it. Nothing. They will always deploy it because it is going to benefit my business. So if it is not giving me the right answer, or it is not giving my customers the satisfaction, I will not deploy it. So that is where RAG becomes very important. And this is how RAG should work. Okay. So just see, if you see the top, so it has two flows. One is where I have to ensure that, the documents that I have are ready to be used by the LLM. And the second is my runtime use case, right? When I have a person who's asking a question and I'm getting the right answer. For the first part, what we have to do is basically, we take the documents. Now, what RAG does is it kind of converts these documents into vectors, which we call embeddings. And then it stores it in a data store, which we call a vector database. Right. So it's taking the documents. So this could be an offline activity or a pre-activity. So I'm taking all my contextual documents and giving it to, say, I have a program which is kind of taking these documents, converting it into vector embeddings, and storing it in a vector database. And my vector database is there. Right. Now, when I'm using my, say, a chatbot or my foundation, my question answer program. So I'm asking a question. What it is doing is it is going to my vector database with my question. So when I'm asking the question, that also gets converted to a vector. It goes to the vector database and finds out similarities. So here it is doing a semantic search. So what are the vector embeddings which are similar to this question embedding that I'm sending you? It brings them back, and that I add with my prompt and send it to my LLM. So what the answer that I get is perfectly contextual. So this is how RAG kind of works. So this is another view of exactly the same thing, but just little bit, how it is getting embedded. So if you see the top part, so these are my original content. So it could be, various types of documents, various kinds of data. So so if you see there's another step that has been added here, it's document to chunks. The documents could be very big. Now, if you're kind of splitting it into smaller pieces, that is what we call as chunks. So the second part is documents to chunks. Then the third is chunks to embeddings. So this is where it is getting converted to vectors. And then finally, the vectors are getting stored in a vector data store. So this is the top part. And then you have the bottom part, which is your real use case, like the business use case. I'm asking a question. It is going to my embedding model. So this question, it gets converted to a vector, my question. Now it goes to the vector database. It finds the vector embeddings, which is similar to my question embedding, brings it back here. Then it adds it to the prompts, and then it goes to the LLM. So you can see this whole flow, and it brings you very good answers with the perfect level of accuracy. So that is how it becomes very important. Why RAG has become very important. And if you see today, it's like this is the fundamental of RAG. But now, if you see, there are hybrid RAGs. For example, this you're using graph query, so you could have one diversion or one branch going to a graph database and bringing some data from a graph database. Then one which could go to a vector database, bringing some content from the vector database. You're combining both, and then you're sending it to LLM. So there are different models of RAG. As students, I'll just divert for a second. I can be very updated. LinkedIn is a fantastic source. See the conversation that's going on. You don't have to go through big articles or something. See what is the conversation going on. You would get a lot of keywords. You would get a pulse of what the CEOs are talking. For example, Satya Nadella, I think end of the year, he said like SaaS is going to be dead. And if you think of it and put it in the agent context, you might start thinking, oh, really? And it starts making sense. Yes, of course. if my agent is going to do all the work, I would not need to log into SAP, right? Because I'll just call an agent and I'll say, go and update my, say, purchase order in SAP. I will not even open SAP. So it's starting to make sense. And just, so that is a very good practice. If you keep a pulse of what is going on in the industry, it will help you keep updated. So I think, so this is a slide on vector database, and I will probably not get into details of what a vector database is, how it works, but very, very high level, a vector database stores, so these vectors you saw. So the documents or text are converted into vectors. Those vectors are stored in a vector database. Now, in some cases, there are unique IDs to these embeddings. There are tags. There could be it could be indexed. So it's a data store. The idea is you put in data and you retrieve the data fast. Here, the documents and the data is getting, like, the input data is getting converted into vector embeddings, vector form, and that is what we are storing in the vector database. And this is a very important part of this whole RAG implementation. Okay, so what is next? This is where, so till this time, what we thought was, what we saw was, like, yes, power of generative AI, what are some of the key capabilities of generative AI, RAG, a very important pattern which has really helped adoption or democratization of generative AI. Now, what is coming up new is what we are calling as agents. Now, there's a lot of discussions. In fact, during the holidays, I was going through LinkedIn, and so what is an AI agent? The definition is like, and in fact, I have seen, I'm currently working in a project with a very large bank, and there I have seen people are really misusing this term as AI agent. Everything is now becoming agent. Even a simple API integration, people are saying, can I call this an agent? So really need to be very cautious, but I'll just give you a background from where this came from. So when we started generative AI, it was like, single model system. I'm asking a question, getting an answer. ChatGPT. I'm asking, okay, give me the top 5 destinations I can visit in January in India, which has, which will have snow, which has, very nice hotels, and it gives me a list. It's more like, consumer to business kind of scenarios. I'm giving it a question, it is giving me an answer. Now, think of it when it comes to, real life scenarios. The first questions, for example, I ask it, like, give me a list of, locations. The second thing that I would want to know is, okay, in these locations, what are the top hotels that fit my budget? Does it have car parking? Does it have, dining facilities? Things like that. Third thing is, how do I reach? Do I need to rent a car? Do I need to book a train? So there is a set of tasks that will basically, overall, what is my goal? My goal is plan a vacation. If I take a step back. So with each question, I'm doing one task. Now, in case of a business also, if you have to, execute a process or a sub process, it is like a set of tasks or activities. Now, it really doesn't make sense, if I have to do each of them, one at a time, have a human sit, yes, right, wrong, good, bad. No, it has to execute simultaneously, right? It's like one after the other. Now, what we have seen is certain, activities will be done through LLM. Certain activities will be done, say, through existing APIs. Certain activities will be done maybe just going and reading, looking up a database, things like that. So how can we combine all of these things? Now, one way to combine is definitely through programs. So I can sit and write programs. And we as technology people, I believe technically I can do anything. Now, whether that makes sense for business, feasible or not, that's a separate thing. So I can definitely write programs and do it. I can do it for one customer. I can do it for two customers. What if I have 5 projects in hand? I cannot do it, right? So that's where we are saying that, can an LLM tell me, what should be my different steps in the process, create that workflow, spawn that workflow automatically. Then it will execute. So execution we have seen, we have tried and tested that, yes, if I give it a, task, it is able to execute. But here, what we are saying the agent will do is, I will give it a overall, like, a broad task, and it should be able to understand what are the different subtasks within it. It should be able to figure out how to do those subtasks, in which order, complete the task, and come and tell me, yes, I did good or I did bad. Okay. So that is basically, what we are calling as an AI agent. You will see many definitions flowing, but I think this is what kind of boils down to what a true AI agent should do. So this is kind of, I just had this diagram. So if you see in the middle, this is the agent, right? So I will invoke it with natural language. So when I say I, it could be a human user, it could be a system user, anything, but it will be invoked with a natural language. So for example, if I say, study for your exam, go and study for your exam. Okay, just like what you could tell to a student or to our children. So this should actually do like, yes, my goal is study for my exam. So let's first figure out what is my exam, when is my exam, what is the syllabus, do I have the notes, what do I need to practice. So this is what it is doing in task goal decomposition, right? So it is figuring out what does this broad task that I have been told to do includes. Second thing is it will figure out, so chain of thought. So what is the sequence? Which comes after what? Which activity comes, or are there parallel activities? Or are there dependent activities? Like I need to know the syllabus before I can study, right? I need to practice the sums, before I can go for the exam, things like that. That is your chain of thought. Then it has to figure out how it is going to do, which is your tool. So what all tools do I have to kind of complete this task, right? Do I have the books? Do I have the notes? If I have the book, which is the book? Is it a PDF? Is it a hard copy? Things like that. So in real life, think of it as, my APIs, my different applications. APIs comes later. Do I really have the digital applications with which I'll complete it? For example, if it's a loan approval agent, right? If I tell go and approve the loan for customer ABC, it has to figure out, I need to see the application, I need to validate the application, I need to see if the customer has enough credit limit. Only then I can go and approve. So how will it do that? It will find the tools. So how do I know the details of the customer? Maybe it has to go to a CRM application. How will I know if the customer is a true customer, like all the data is valid or not? Maybe I'll have to go to the Aadhaar database, right? How do I know if the person has the right credit limit? I might have to go to the CIBIL score or something, or maybe an internal database. So these are my tools. So I should be able to execute this automatically without manual intervention in the right sequence, because I know the workflow. I know exactly what should come after that. Once that tools have been identified, the action is executed. Then what happens is, what is very important for the agent is it reflects. So did I do it good? Did I do it bad? What could be improved? What, how did I compare with something maybe I did last week? So that is also very important. Now, what is another part of this agent is the memory, which kind of helps it to execute all these things in planning, in tools, and in action. So there are two categories. I would not say categories, but it's like technically speaking, one is the context, which is the short term, which is my conversation context, where I'm calling it from. So for example, in this case, my loan, right? In particular, customer ABC, that is my context. The other is my long-term memory, which is my larger context. It could be my whole organizational context. Like that is where maybe my RAG could come in. I have all my loan specific documents in a folder, and that is your source of truth. Whatever you say should adhere to the process that is mentioned here. So this overall, all these five components, need to come together to kind of build an agent. What is very important, by definition, agents should be autonomous. But in reality, whatever we have seen, autonomous agents still are little, we are far away from it. There are still manual interventions because businesses are still not having that level of confidence to make it completely autonomous. But eventually, by definition, it should go towards that autonomous nature. Now, the other thing that we are seeing, so this is basically how we are defining AI agents. Now, will everything, all automated workflows with AI become agents? Probably not. So that's where I think, which we all previously also had, is AI workflows. So workflows which are pre-configured, not configured at runtime by LLM. So here, if you see this LLM is planning. So there could be scenarios where you already have a workflow. Say maybe in your enterprise systems, I know exactly how this whole loan operation is going to work. It's configured in my BPM tool, right? But then I'm using AI to drive each of the components. I'm using AI to say validate my documents. I'm using AI to go through my application, do the entity extraction. I'm using AI to do a risk assessment. Tell me what is the risk score of this particular ABC person. So these are also definitely, Gen AI and AI powered workflows, but probably these are AI led or AI driven workflows. So when we're talking of agentic, at this point, I think it's important we kind of differentiate also, because otherwise this is going to be a, we have already started that, in fact everything is becoming an agent, which does not make sense, because the agent will be costly also from a total cost of ownership of a company to own, build, create, deploy agent, because it by definition it is completely autonomous. Everything is driven by the LLM, right from when I'm invoking my agent. So this is basically and this is a field which is kind of you know growing very very fast. You'll see everybody is talking about agentic AI or AI agents. Companies are creating agents, business agents, as well as IT agents, for different purposes. For example, Salesforce has created, agents to manage churn. There are several business agents in IT also. We are seeing, code generation agents. So this is a field that is going to see a lot of traction this year, and there is going to be a lot of evolution and work on AI. So with that, some of the potential areas, and this is, some indicative areas, not at all exhaustive. Do we have time? Yes. Maybe 5 more minutes. So this is, some indicative areas. And for example, from my personal experience, I'm working on, say, customer service operation, supply chain optimization. I am actually working with, a large client where we are doing it. Fraud detection is absolutely a prime area which everybody is speaking of. I still haven't have got experience on this, but this is definitely an area because of the wide diversity of the data. So think of the different large variety of patterns of frauds, and all of us may have experienced it. People calling that your KYC has expired, your phone is going to be switched off tomorrow, things like that, and there's a wide variety of patterns. So this is definitely an area, where there's going to be a lot of potential of, use of agents. However, are they going to be totally autonomous? Yet to see. So I think that is something that is going to evolve as we are exploring, as we are hardening the solution, and as we are also bringing together the guardrails. I think that guardrails factor is extremely important. It's not yet very formalized in the industry. People are thinking, people have started understanding the importance, but do we have the regulations in place? Maybe not. But we definitely need them to have this, deployed at scale, for businesses. So all this is very good, so we have learned, maybe I've taken you through a lot of, theory or some experiences from my recent client interactions. We understand this is a very important area. This is a focus area, extremely disruptive, because it is kind of changing the basic way in which the IT companies or businesses operate, as Dr. Hoda said. Now what is it for us, or for students, professionals? We definitely have to get upskilled or reskilled. That is given. So I'll tell you, in my organization last year, every one of us, like almost like we are in India, we are almost 150,000 people. Every one of us had to get through, a certain number of days where we all had to go through this. We had to build this skill, and we are still learning because the thing is evolving, right? So as students, you definitely have to prepare yourself. Maybe it's still not there in your syllabuses. I have seen, some third year students I was mentoring for IEEE program. It may not be there very formalized in their syllabuses, but get onto the internet, There are so many open source projects. There are, free data available. So try some use cases, try your hands on. There are these models, of course, available. Most cloud providers give a student account. So definitely try. And so these are some of the indicative frameworks I have written. These are, again, not exhaustive. But I think learning a language like Python is given. You have to. I mean, there's no question about it. With agentic, this is absolutely evolving area. Autogen, LangChain, Crew.ai. I'm learning one of them, right? Yeah, I'm trying to see how it works. At least have a point of view, have an idea about how they work, what are the prerequisites, if you can do some small experimentation, try to do it so that you have some hands-on flavor. Because see, when we are actually in today's job market, you have to have a differentiation between you and the machine. I mean, it's a very crude way of putting it, but if something can be done by a machine or a program, why do I need a human? That is the perception. So you have to have a differentiator. So, and that is where what you see on the right comes in. Communication is extremely important. Machine will communicate only what I tell it to do. So it's mechanical. Curiosity, creativity, and creativity is not really drawing a picture or singing a song or things like that. How creatively you can solve a problem. Design thinking, it goes back to what my users want and how can I innovatively design a solution for them. And this is, I mean, these are at very small levels also. It's not like, okay, designing means I have to design an iPhone tomorrow, nothing like that. Maybe just you design your program in such a way that it's super optimized. It just you it's performing well, it's giving you the right answer, it's structurally, it can be extensible, it's flexible, things like that. Okay. Problems, and then what you see is typical skills that we as humans possess, and we often neglect it, but these are going to be our key value differentiators, because machine will is it's still some time before a machine will kind of get, or we will build such kind of capabilities in a machine. So I think with that, I'll kind of take a pause. Maybe I can handle some questions. But so this is basically what I had for today. Ritika ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure this insightful session has enlightened the participants. And yes, there are certain questions by the participant which I would like to now take up with your permission.
Sure.
Ma'am, first question we have. Integrating Gen AI with traditional businesses may demand a lot of technical know-how and frequent modification. What is the actual reality? Like, what kind of technical know-how and things are required if a traditional business wants to adopt a Gen AI?
So see, this cannot be like today. I am a when I say traditional business, I'm interpreting it as, say, I don't have AI, right? So I have my workflows, I have my database, I have my systems of record. So tomorrow I just cannot say, okay, tomorrow I want to be Gen AI. That is not going to happen. You have to have, it has to happen in phases. It's like you have to have a stage where you are AI ready. Do you have the data? First question, do you even have the data to get into traditional AI? Do you have the use cases? Have you qualified your use cases? Are they giving you, do you see ROI? So there is a roadmap, there is a phased approach from a traditional business to get onto, the AI bandwagon and get onto, become a AI enabled or AI driven enterprise. However, that is not saying that, yes, you can't do that. It's always like, typical consulting. Pick up the area where you see the largest pain point, start small, scale big, do POCs, do pilots. And of course, the other question that I think, that other point was that, do you need to know about the systems? Absolutely. Not only systems, you need a very deep knowledge about your current business process, what your as is process is, what you want your to be to become. So AI enabled process, what do you want it to become? Because if you take a traditional process and just say, okay, I just want to shift, switch this to AI, that is not going to give you any benefit. It's still, there are so many memes floating around. So it has to be an AI enabled business, right? Business process. So design that process, then you bring in technology to make it AI enabled. I think it's a path, it's a roadmap.
Absolutely, ma'am. Very rightly said. Thank you so much for the wonderful explanation. One more question that we have. How much is the success of Gen AI if the business or the organization do not have secure data or what we can term as bad data?
Yeah, I think again, I'm just thinking of memes. So if you see bad data, you get bad AI. I mean, that's so data is the foundation. I mean, and I think that is one of the things that uh, I would not say a blocker, but why organizations are not going all out on AI or generative AI is availability of data. They even don't know all the data that is there in the enterprise. So structured data is one part. Yes, we have some visibility. We know like these are my applications, these are my databases. But the amount of unstructured data that is there in the enterprise, documents, old documents. In fact, just look at our laptops. The amount of documents we have, we don't even know. So if I have to create, maybe a GenAI model for myself, which can just go and pick up answers, pick up if I say, go and give me my resume, it will find 5 resumes, starting from, maybe whatever. So I think that data foundation needs to be very solid. The good the data, the better your artificial intelligence, GenAI or AI. Similarly, with GenAI, you do get the pre-trained models, but if you're going to use RAG, you have to give it the right set of relevant documents to have it, not hallucinate. So I think data is basically the foundation.
Absolutely, very rightly said, ma'am. And thank you so much. With this, we come to an end to this wonderful session. But now, before we share a small token of remembrance with you. So I would now invite Huda sir to present ma'am with a certificate for this wonderful session we have had today with ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir.
And Debanjana, superb lecture. Though we all know that this Gen AI or ChatGPT kind of application is evolving, and probably we may need to change our attitude and approach in coming days. But whatever is available in today's time, superb session. Congratulations to you. And
Thank you, sir.
this certificate is not for the purpose of certification, but for the purpose of remembrance that when this entire technology, the disruption, which is called as Gen AI, the AI driven, the generative AI driven disruption was in infancy, we had such a wonderful talk. So, as and when you see this, this will be a remembrance. So, thank you so much. And memento, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you so much. This memento is also as part of remembrance. और हम तो जनरेटिव एआई में वो दिन देखना चाहते हैं जिसके लिए किसी शायर ने क्या कहा कि क्या खूब कहा है कि इब्तिदाए इश्क है रोता है क्या आगे आगे देख होता है क्या. So generative AI is penetrating in our day-to-day life. And yes, there are positive sides, there are negative sides. You rightly said that we need to be cautious enough, and this has to be a kind of supplementary method. This cannot be a kind of complementary method that we can replace the manual system or the traditional model and be fully dependent on this. So आने वाले दिनों में हमें पता चलेगा, और उसी के लिए ये दो पंक्तियां हैं कि इब्तिदाए इश्क है रोता है क्या आगे आगे देख होता है क्या टेक्नोलॉजी कहाँ पहुंचती है. But I'm the firm believer as a student of computer science that whatever happens, the intelligent people will utilize the technology, will use the technology, will apply the technology in a sensible manner, will not get addicted with the technology, will not get controlled by the technology, rather will use technology as a tool to ensure that their month's work can be done in just hours, or their week works can be done in just minutes. That is the purpose. And thank you so much. We'll have you on this platform for some other topic in future as well.
Sure, sir. Definitely.
So thank you so much, Debanjana ma'am, for this wonderful session. Dear participants, we have come to an end to this wonderful talk today. And the feedback form link for the certificate of participation generation has already been shared with all of you in the chat window. Please click on the same and fill in your details carefully to generate your certificate of participation. Yes, dear participant, we come to an end to this wonderful session today, for which I once again thank our expert, Debanjana ma'am today. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful talk and the wonderful session we have had today. We shall surely have other wonderful sessions with you in the future. Dear participants, we have already shared the feedback form link in the chat window. Please click on the same and fill in your details carefully for the certificate of participation generation for this particular wonderful session. Our next webinar is planned on 25th of January. Please do not leave this meeting room till the time you do not receive your certificate of participation in your inbox. Once you receive the same in your inbox, you may acknowledge and leave the meeting room with a promise to join us back on 25th of January with our next session. Yes, dear participants, please mark the date in your calendar. 25th of January, we are going to have our next session on another important topic. So please mark the date. Please fill in the feedback form, submit the same to generate your certificate of participation. If after submitting the feedback form, you do not find the certificate of participation in your inbox, and you have joined this webinar today for the first time, please check your spam folder and mark it as not spam. If it is not even there, you can share your email ID with all panelists in the chat window, where we are there to help you out with your certificate of participation. But a prerequisite for all of you is please submit the feedback form. The feedback form link is already shared in the chat window. Please submit the same to generate your certificate of participation. Over 100 certificates have already been successfully generated. Please submit your feedback form to generate your certificate of participation. Thank you, dear participants. Thank you for acknowledging. Please mark the date in your calendar, 25th January. We are once again meeting with another webinar of ours. Do join the same and enhance your knowledge.